go ahead about.
Okay, so we were talking earlier, and I think the camera ran out. So, fine.
Cheers.
After what is it? January, February, March, 4.5 months, CBC finally got an expert on Radio 1. Got an expert on bioterrorism. And they were asking, what have we learned? And this guy was saying, well, not much. You know, he was a little worried. I don't think he understood why we should be worried. So, you know, like I was alert, Pauline was more alert about it, about the possibility of this being a bioterror attack. And what I was worried about was, you know, what if it was? And then look at the response around the world, aside from China. Look at the response around the world was, hey, we're really scared of overreacting. We're really scared of overreacting. Wow. And what I was saying was, a bioterrorist, in the future, someone who was anticipating or had the ambition to be a bioterrorist, would have just been slavering, still would be slavering about the reaction. I can't wait to try out my little version of bioterror, because the response is not going to be appropriate. It won't be strong enough. So, now understand, this whole thing was prefaced with, this is not a bioterror attack, because the experts all say that it's not biotech. You know, there's no sign of there being genetic manipulation. Now, hold on a second. I think I'm the first person to point it out. Had you figured this out?
Nope.
And Pauline figures a lot of things out, I'm telling you.
I hadn't even thought about it.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about it for a long time. It seems like every day CBC gets out there and says, hey, you know it's racist to have a conspiracy theory, especially if it involves the People's Republic of China, because it involves people of color. They don't say that, but that's what's involved.
I don't think that's it.
Well,
I think it has more to do with who's funding the World Bank right now.
which is?
I think that it's getting a lot of funding from China. And then
The WHO, for example, WHO is in China's pocket. Someone else was saying this, in China's pocket. You know, what they were saying is, hey, you know, the talk is it's in China's pocket. Of course it isn't. But, because they were saying, the main funder of WHO is the United States. That's why.
Yeah, but the United States is in debt.
It's just that way.
So
I mean, China is getting all this stuff. People's Republic of China, not the not the actual relatively free China located in Taiwan and Formosa. I mean, that one, when I was a kid, it was a whipping boy for fake left wingers. Really, oh, you know, like Chiang Kai-shek, he's a horrible dictator. Well, he wasn't. He was a dictator. When you got Mao Zedong as your main competitor in the field, you got to be really, really bad. And here the left wingers go, they say, go, Mao, go, because you're a left winger. He wasn't a left winger, you stupid morons. Neither were you, frankly. But anyway, here's the deal. There's a difference between bioterrorism and biotech. Bioterrorism biowarfare has existed for a little while. Biotech hasn't. How long has warfare existed? Well, apparently in Australia it was kind of de rigueur for colonialists to hand out blankets with smallpox to the Aborigines. Uh-oh, this was before biotech ever existed. And apparently, this might be apocryphal. I'm sure left-wingers will come on and say, oh, it's apocryphal, and stuff like fake left-wingers. Apocryphal, it's like fake history, they really specialize. Donald Trump specializes in fake news. Fake left-wingers specialize in fake history, and fake archaeology. They were going around saying, hey, like in the past, there were no cultures who ate their own. Were cannibals. What do you think of that?
That's a lie.
Well, it is a lie. And what it took was to find, like poop, kind of like semi-coprolites and stuff like that with, but poop, maybe not really fossilized, but preserved poop. I guess it means dry sorts of things with like human poop with human DNA. There you go, fake left-wingers, fake historians, fake archaeologists, lying. Our ancestors, all of them, at one point in time, almost certainly would have been cannibals. They would have eaten other people. But it took this sort of stuff. Why? Because they're telling pious lies. Hey, it wouldn't be nice, especially if it's people of color, to say that their ancestors ate human beings. What would happen? Well, people would attack them, and they'd be racist towards them and stuff like that. Well, we're just going to have to face the truth, okay? So you people that tell those pious lies, you're pious frauds. And there's a reason why that I'm using that term. It's been used before, generally about religious people. You've got a religion, and you've made up pie in the sky, pious in the sky, pious pie in the sky, about any variety of things, because to say otherwise, to say the truth, wouldn't be politically correct and sociologically correct. And you're just making it up, make it up, lie. Margaret Mead saying, where was that, Samoa? Hey, like these people were, you like hippies, like free love. And then someone goes back and does the homework. They find out that she was just making it up. It's what she thought was the ideal society. It kind of has an ideal climate, and they're people of color. Therefore, it's got to be, yeah. Now, of course, the left-wingers fake left-wingers attack back. They said, hey, like the Samoans had been acculturated in, the less than 100 years. It was just like a few decades, and they turned into Westerners. And gotten jealous. It takes a long time to change a culture. You see how phony that is? It takes so long to change a culture. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, oh, it just happened in a generation or something like that. 2 generations. Nah, it doesn't happen that way, you stupid morons. You can tell that lie and convince yourselves. And believe me, you're convinced. You think I'm just a bad guy and all that sort of stuff. Pointing out that you're bad people. You're bad people. You're lying, fake, phony left-wingers. Don't believe in democracy. Don't believe in the scientific method. You're just going around, you believe in your lies, telling them. So here's the thing. The Mongols. I'm sure you phony, fake flunkies have come up with, hey, the Mongols never did this. But my suspicion is they did. The Mongols were pastoral nomads. They wouldn't have had this technology. But, what happened is they'd just go sweep along people in their wake, and they'd have people with the technology of catapults. So they'd be laying siege to a place, and they get a little bit tired hanging around. They wanted to be moving on. And so what they would do is they'd put corpses on these catapults. catapulted into the besieged city. Well, it just wasn't any old corpses. These corpses had bubonic plague. And that apparently is how bubonic plague was spread, from east to west. Was they did this apparently more than one time. And I guess it was successful. So, yeah. So when is that? Well, they started moving around 1200 AD, and the height of the power might have been 1300 AD. It's a little bit before biotech. You lying, lazy, intellectually dishonest, fake left-wingers. So here's the deal. You can get these experts. This is all they know. They don't know anything about history. Experts on bioterror and biotech. And so they're saying, well, it's not biotech, therefore it's not bioterror. They don't understand history. They've got their blinkers on.
Biological warfare.
It's not. Yeah, it's biological warfare. What they're saying, it's not biotech, and then they say, therefore it's not bio. But they don't know. They don't understand the history of biological warfare. It's been around for a long, long time. So, are the Chinese behind this? I don't know. They're behaving very, very culpably. Now I'm going to have to check. Someone was telling me that we're getting concentrated computer hacking attacks from these bozos. I'm talking about the People's Republic of China. We're also getting it from the Russians. For a while I was suspicious of the Russians, but it looks as though the Russians are actually getting decimated by this crazy thing. Whereas the Chinese kind of weathered it pretty well. And understand, so lots of people have died in China. What is it, about 3,000? Jeez. I would say that regime probably has 3,000 enemies, even like within Wuhan. Wuhan's 11 million people. Do you think there are 3,000 people they wouldn't mind to see dead? And what they would have had is a vaccination thing in the recent past, and they just made sure that the people that they didn't like in Wuhan didn't get the proper vaccination. They just would have got a placebo. So, what I'd advise the Chinese, if they don't like being portrayed in this fashion, is stop hacking. Stop. Here's the thing. They're crying and screaming about people saying there's conspiracy theory, and that's racism. What is it when the People's Republic of China has their hackers saying it's the Americans doing it? Isn't that racism? Why aren't you calling that out, you stupid morons? You see what I'm saying?
Totally.
No. But no, they're people of color, and they're calling down white people. Now understand, what I want is consistency. Yeah, I want consistency from the CBC. The CBC runs all sorts of shows in the middle of the night coming from BBC. And the BBC is another fake left-wing organization. And you will hear again and again criticism of Zionists or Jews. Which is it? Now understand, Jews, generally when they hear attack on Zionism, what do they say it is? It's racism. Now I'm saying it isn't. Although I think many of the people who attack Zionism are racist. But the attacks generally are specifically at Zionists. But here's the difference. How big is the total number of Jews in the world? Is it 12 million? Is it 18 million? How big is the total number of Chinese people in the world? Even in the People's Republic of China, it's getting up towards 1.5 billion. Do you see the discrepancy? BBC and CBC, by using their feed, attack Jews via Zionism, and they see nothing wrong with it. That's racist, because using your own terms, it isn't racism as far as I'm concerned, but because you say to attack the Chinese is the People's Republic of China is racism, when that's your own terms. If you do that with the Jews in your own terms, you are racist, and it's absolutely shameful that you take on such a small group, one that's been so picked on, and then you're defending this huge group. It's the biggest country in the world, representing the largest ethnic group in the world, the plurality of people in the world. Over 1 billion people are ethnic Han Chinese. And here you are defending them. It's the second biggest economy in the world. This is not the 19th century. This is not the 20th century, where per capita China might have had, what we think of as mainland China, might have had one of the lowest per capita incomes in the world. We're in the 21st century, and the Chinese economy is booming. They say even this year, with their attack, that their economy might grow. I don't think that's going to happen with the United States. I don't think that's going to happen with Canada. I don't think it's going to happen with Europe. I think the majority of countries in the world are going to see a severe economic downturn. So here's the deal. What I want to do is I want to find out who this Amy, who's been on CBC a couple of days in a row, I want to find out what that organization is and who funds it. And if the mainland Chinese, any funding on it, I want to see that exposed on CBC. If they don't do any funding, no apologies from me, because there are all sorts of people during the Cold War, fake left-wingers, and some people that I used to think of as heroes, like George Bernard Shaw, Sidney and Beatrice Webb. I don't think they got any money from the Soviet Union, from Russia back then. But Lenin, this is amazing. They'd come in and say, oh, it's a workers' paradise. They'd go into the Soviet Union to come back. It's a workers' paradise. And boy, oh boy, it sent people to workers' paradise. Or because it sent people to death. Tens of millions of people. So these people, Lenin himself and his flunkies, called them useful idiots. They were idiots and they were useful to the Soviet cause, and they just did it for free. So this Amy and her group that are supposedly defending Chinese Canadians and stuff like that is doing just the opposite. What you're doing is you're just setting up an intolerable discrepancy between democracy, people who support democracy, and people who support the Chinese. Like, I support Chinese who are legitimate refugees that come over here from China trying to get away from the Chinese, the People's Republic of China. Long-time support of those people. That's long-time support of the nationalist Chinese. They were originally kind of like fascists, but they were better, frankly, than the communist Chinese. So, and ultimately they turned out something that works better economically, or was until recently, and worked better democratically. So I'll give you an example. They've had somewhat the same sort of success as South Korea. So let's look at North Korea versus South Korea. Per capita GDP in South Korea is about $19,000 a year. Last time I checked, might have gone up, might have gone down a little bit. $19,000 American a year. That's pretty good. That's almost as good as New Zealand, maybe even better. Okay?
Well, it's more than what we make.
It's more than what we make individually. Now, let's look at what it is. That's per capita, understand? That between the two of us, that'd be $38,000.
I know.
So it's way more than what we
Yeah.
make. Now, let's look at what it is in North Korea. $1,000 a year. And you get fake left-wingers going, hey, they're having another famine. How could that happen? Well, communists just have famines, The thing is, belief systems, when they become practice systems, they have real-time, real-life implications. You can't just have some sort of belief system and go along and say, I'm going to have an economic system where we do blah, 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 blah. We don't have democracy, blah, 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 and not expect it to have real-time, real-life consequences. That's what's happened in North Korea. So, since the Cold War, during the Cold War, since it started, and this is like 1949 or thereabouts, the one Korea, the one that's capitalist and we were told were bad guys during the Cold War, they have something like a democracy, It's amazing considering it comes from a Confucianist background. And it's 19 times more efficient. I understand. When we get this $1,000 a year, I suspect that's cooked up commie stats. I think it's probably too high. Yeah. I know you guys don't like stats. This is too much like science, the scientific method. You don't like science. You like your phony little lies and stuff like that. Well, wake up and smell the coffee. You know? Jesus. Sick and tired of you dingbats. So here's the deal. Yeah, as soon as CBC turns it around on Jews and Zionism, then I'm going to be maybe willing to listen, but only to a certain extent, because Jews are small. I mean, Israel itself is 5 million, 6 million people. Many of those aren't Jews themselves. And you got the People's Republic of China, 1.5, 1.4 billion people. We're going to go with 1.4. 1.4. How much more is that than 5 million? Well, that's amazing. It's like, what is that? 5 billion, 0, 0, 5. That's like 1,500 to 5. It's like 300 times the population. I'm trying to do it in my head here. It's a little less than the 300 times, but 200 times. Easy. And somehow or another, worldwide, they're picked on. 200 times Jews. The Jews are out there. They got the Jewish lobby. They're rich. They're capitalists. Oh, and they're white. Yeah, they're Europeans. Here's the deal. Europeans in the period between 1942 and 1945 made the definitive statement, and that's an accent on the about whether Jews were Europeans or not. And the answer was a resounding no. And how did they, what was that answer? It came in the form of the Holocaust. There were all sorts of countries that were controlled by Germany that went along with it, collaborated with it. France not least of them. And France, you listen to French people now. Hey, like Zionists, we're all down on them. Hey, you useless pukes. I want to hear people criticize Zionists, if they're going to criticize it, Zionism. I want to hear people whose ancestors don't have their hands soiled with Jewish blood. And it's not just the Holocaust. It's pogroms and stuff like that. Catholic Church. You flunkies. Okay, enough.